And welcome to Wrestling and. This week, we are going to talk about Wrestling and NXT. It's been around for a little bit now, and it's gone through a lot of changes. We've seen ups and downs and all sorts of different things from this brand. Originally a developmental brand, coming from FCW. Actually, originally a reality show that became a developmental brand.
It started as a reality show.
It's gone on to have some of the best matches in WWE history, and recently it changed its format. So, you know, it's an exciting part of WWE that will leave a mark, and hopefully will leave more marks in the future. So that's what we're going to talk about. When I say we, I'm talking about me, John Ensman, and my wonderful co-host, Justin from In Ring Art. Justin, how are you tonight, man?
Not too bad. How are you over there in the Rocky Mountains?
I do live in the Rocky Mountains. I actually live in a hut on the mountain. It's pretty good. I went to an indie show tonight. It's even calling it indies, not a local show. And it was quite interesting. They always say when you podcast, Justin, that the wrestler might be listening to your show. Have you ever heard that? Like, if you podcast and talk about a wrestler, they might always listen to your show. So I have nothing bad to say about any of the wrestlers. But there was a guy on the show from AEW, Dark. His name was, what was it? It was, sad that I can't even remember his name. I'm trying to think. Ryzen. He kind of was like a demon preacher type dude. Ring a bell? It was not Terra Ryzen. It was just Ryzen. But that would have been amazing. That would have been amazing if... Oh, man. Yeah, that's a rough situation for him. But, you know, we do Wrestling Report. I'm not going to report on the show. They had a Lights Out match, which was a kind of a copy of the AEW thing. And the problem was they actually turned the lights out. And I'm like, you're not actually supposed to turn the lights off, you know? And
Somebody must have read the show notes, or who was running the show. Oh, we got to turn the lights off.
Yeah. And then, like, they had a smoke machine pour smoke into the ring, and you couldn't see. What was
Evil there?
In spirit, he was.
Togo?
Yeah, I was. That would have made it more exciting, but it was nice getting out and about. So you know what I mean. You been to any live shows lately? It's been a little while, huh? Has it been New Japan for you?
Yeah, since the New Japan. They did have SmackDown here yesterday, but
Staples Center
didn't. I thought about it, but then it's like it was starting at 4:45, and you know that means I would have to like kind of leave work early, and I don't want to fill out the paperwork for that and all that. So,
well, everyone tells me that that like you've really got to go to house shows for WWE. Have you been? Do you agree?
Well, the last time I went to a WWE show was 2014. No, 2015.
That's not that long ago.
I took my oldest son, who was about 3 at the time.
I know.
3 or 4 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
We went to the go home show for WrestleMania 31.
Oh shit!
Where the Rock, I'm sorry, where Roman and Brock were doing that tug of war for the title at the end. We were at that one, and then
so that was a TV tape or a live TV event.
That was a Raw.
Yeah, because Brock ain't showing up to no house shows, bro. Believe me.
Well, yeah, that was the Raw Go Home show, but before WrestleMania 31. I think in the few months before, so we're talking the winter tour of 2014.
Yeah,
I did take him to a house show. And yeah, I think there was like I don't remember the main event. I think it was probably like Seth Rollins and John Cena in a street fight or something like that.
And it's like a title match too, which is kind of funny.
There was an Adrian Neville Sami Zayn match on the card. Which was awesome. NXT title match. Speaking of that,
we'll talk about that.
And there was also rest in peace Luke Harper and Dolph Ziggler.
Oh wow!
The IC title. So
I remember that
card.
era.
And house shows in general, because we're speaking about NXT, and the watching it in those days when, in that 2014, 15, 16, did feel like they were house shows in a way. But when you go to a house show at the Staples Center, they dim the lights, and they just light up the ring. And I just like that treatment, watching it from an aesthetic purpose.
Yeah, that's true.
It is different. The wrestlers can do whatever you want, and you can tell they're a lot looser.
They can improvise
themselves more.
They're not worrying about the time cues.
Yeah, and you can tell that, when they're out there and enjoying themselves, that's what makes the product. That's like the number one ingredient for a good product is when they're enjoying themselves, and we see that a lot with AEW.
And that's like with all sorts of work.
Having a good time and enjoying themselves, that does reflect into the product.
Yeah, for sure. What's funny is like Batista, random. I don't know if we've barely ever brought him up on this podcast, but Batista. when I've heard Batista asked what his like favorite matches of all time are that he wrestled in, and he always says that it was him and Rey Mysterio at house shows at this one loop they did. Like he's like, we just tore the house down every house show, and they got to do kind of what they wanted, and they're both pretty hot, and so I can only imagine. They only do house shows in Colorado Springs now. They used to do SmackDown, but now SmackDown's too big for this city. You know what I mean? They do Denver. So we have an arena here, so maybe I'll go catch a house show sometime.
Yeah, and plus you don't have to deal with the commercials.
Oh, yeah.
And then, 205 Live or Main Event or whatever else they record, and all the spots and the endless talking.
Well, I agree. When I saw AEW, I saw them tape Dynamite, and look, we all know wrestling is scripted or whatnot, but when you watch a TV taping, it almost makes it more scripted for me, because it's almost like we had wrestlers coming out and just not being in character, and then action, and then they would jump into character, and that, like, Cody did that, and it kind of took away from it, where it's like, I want to see you just be Cody on stage, but it was still fun. So yeah, man. You watch anything you said you watched? You checked up on Best of the Super Juniors? Did you see Show versus Yo? Did you catch that one?
I didn't see that.
Me neither.
Actually, I can tell you what I did see was yesterday, and we talked about how some of them are just VOD. And I was at the laundromat yesterday, and I was watching one match in between washer and dryer, and I checked out Hiromu and Doki.
Yeah, that was last couple days or last night.
Yeah, it was one of them. It was the most recent one I was able to look at, and really great match.
I imagine.
Doki's great, and it was no commentary.
Really?
Like we were talked about, some of those shows, they're not doing live commentary for, even in Japanese.
Well, see, I went back and looked at the list and stuff, and like I had watched every show up till then, as far as juniors, Best of the Super Juniors. Right. And I hadn't seen any like that, but you saw it. Like, you saw one that was like that, which is crazy because that was the last.
I think they're waiting a couple days, I think, until they put the commentary on. So maybe by the time you check, it's already there.
Okay.
But so is it I know we're supposed to talk about NXT right now, but is the finals going to be Yo and Hiromu?
Yes. And no, we always got to catch everyone up on the week in case you just listen to podcasts and you don't watch wrestling. It's Yo and Hiromu, which is exciting. Yo went on a losing streak at the beginning and came back, and he beat Sho, which was the big rivalry, and Yo getting kind of a push here. Now, I don't think it's a question who's going to win unless they're worried about Hiromu somehow. But and he should win. I mean, I think that's perfect. That draws, that's the spot, and you want that Hiromu match for Wrestle Kingdom. Considering the Hiromu versus Despy match was really fucking great. As it, like, why the fuck wouldn't it be, right? So, good stuff going on there. I haven't watched any of the tag stuff. The average age in this tag league is like 40. But, no surprise there. It's going to be Dangerous Techers against Naito and Sonata, which is no different than like when I I guess it is a little different, but how often did we see Evil and Sonata? And now we have Naito and Sonata. So
well, they needed a spot for Evil because I mean for Naito because are we looking at? Was he supposed to win the G1? We don't know really. He was one of the favorites until his injury.
Who knows?
So they got to get Naito on that card somehow.
Yeah,
so there it is.
Absolutely. He definitely has to be on it, and I would want him to go against someone from Noah too, as he has been unmentioned in that talk. So I'd love to see him go against someone for that third Wrestle Kingdom show, but.
And plus, he's probably still healing a bit because they put him right. He's tagging now, so he's not having to work, as hard. So I think that's part of it too. Is let's let him tag for a few months, and then we can kind of give him something going into the spring.
I totally agree. New Japan, it's been almost hard lately. It is so cold. Probably this is maybe the coldest I've ever seen the product. No one's talking about it. I talked to you about it, and that's about it. I don't even listen to New Japan podcasts anymore, really, which is
I still listen to Super J Cast. I enjoy it. So, and I just haven't really caught it too often. Like I said, I don't really like the way the format is the way they format it on the website. It's a little hard to tell which is which.
Oh yeah, that's terrible.
But I also don't feel like I have to go out of my way to see it.
We're probably losing listeners by talking about it.
Yeah, I'll go and, be a vulture and scrap it, take a look at certain things. Like, I want to see some... I hear that El Phantasmo's had a good tournament. I want to take a look at some of the stuff he's been doing.
Definitely has changed up his style a little bit. The rope walk, slow rope walk, he's more exciting. He doesn't do the slow rope walk. He kind of, unless it's really called for, he had a match with Taguchi that was a total comedy match that was actually pretty fucking good. So
they're both good. Taguchi is really good. He's a little underrated.
Taguchi is really good. Shit.
We should probably have focused him on a little bit more in the comic because I think he just makes it work a little bit better because he can...
I brought him up.
Yeah, we did. We should have given him a little more run.
But he's a great comedy and serious wrestler. He can switch it on and off like a little light switch. And no, he's been going for a long time too. You go and watch his matches with Finn Balor as his partner. Amazing.
Right. Apollo 55.
Apollo 55, yeah.
Definitely, I think El Phantasmo should be probably a heavyweight at some point too.
Yeah, he's kind of got that ZSJ body. He's thicker than ZSJ though, but he's tall.
In a way, he's almost like a Kenny clone in a way too.
How so?
Well, he's Canadian. He started out as a light heavyweight. He's in the Bullet Club. There's a lot of things
I could see those,
similar.
But his style is really different to me. Although he does try that one-win angel, and that's been a part of the story. But he's told a great story in this tournament. He's had some questioning whether he should do heel tactics. He's tried to get the one-winged angel. Just a cool little story there that no one's talking about online.
He seems like a guy too that would have a completely different moveset if he was a babyface.
So I don't know if I told you this or who I mentioned, but he was a babyface for most of his career until he joined New Japan, which is hard to believe almost.
Okay.
Because he's kind of a natural heel.
Yeah, I've just known him for the last 3 years or so.
Rev Pro, I think, or Rev Pro.
Oh, he did stuff over there. Okay. All right, let's just do some NXT. I think we're all caught up. We had that Hook debut that I knew that he was Taz's son, and he was kind of just like this little sidekick guy, but he finally just had a match, and everybody is super impressed, it seems.
And we haven't seen it, but he is like Ty Conti in a way where he was really popular, but didn't show up on TV a ton. But they said this match was good. I heard there was a lot of judo moves. I heard the tag team match was really good, which is much better than their terrible fucking match at Triple A's show, which that whole show was a gimmick in itself. I sent you some of those videos of some of the shit on that. Did you see the guy, it was... who's the announcer on SmackDown? Was it Corey Graves' brother, Adonis? Did you see him do that? That's that Was it a moonsault that he just missed? Completely missed.
Doesn't he have like some kind of like MAGA gimmick or something over there?
He did back in the day. I don't. That was like years ago because I don't know anymore. Right. But he kind of got on CMLL doing that. But nowadays he is still a heel. So, but
Sam Adonis.
Sam
right?
Adonis. Yeah, he just totally blew that fucking splash and. There was other awkward stuff, too, on that show. I mean, every match had its own awkwardness, even the five-man. So, not much to say about that show, and that's probably for the better. But we do have a good amount to talk about, and that is NXT. NXT, people. Justin, you a fan of NXT right now?
Right now. I like colors, so I like the new logo because I just like colorful stuff. So
you are an artist.
Just from this, I like the colors. I've seen some of the aesthetics they're giving the show right now, and it does have like an old studio show vibe. But is it what? And there's just I did watch most of some War Games, and this maybe is just me. I was a little frustrated with it because I just didn't know who anybody was. I haven't been really watching the product since they've done the switch over, even a little bit before they did the switch over. Mm-hmm. Most of it is just a time thing, just not having the time to do all of it.
Well, I mean, let's be honest here, not making the time either because you watch some wrestling. I mean, you could easily switch. So, I'm just saying.
Choosing to consume my time with other things.
Yeah,
you got to cut things out at some point. But
I mean, I don't watch the weekly show. I hear about it. I hear people talk about it. But
right. It's not must see like it used to be. But comparing it to what it was, it's definitely not the same. It doesn't mean it's not a good product, but it's definitely not what it used to be. It was one of those things where it wasn't broke, but they fixed it, or they tried to break it so they could fix it. It's like if, you're a kid and you want a new pair of shoes, maybe you get your shoes ripped or, you purposely kind of, will destroy your shoes or something like that so your parents will get you new ones. Oh, see, there's a hole in them,
Yeah.
It seems like they did that with NXT.
Well, I mean,
over the last 2 years.
I think there was a little bit of embarrassment from the Wednesday Night Wars, and just from what I've heard, and they Triple H kind of got. I mean, he got.
They asked for it, really. I mean, they wasn't AEW on Wednesday first, and then they put themselves on Wednesday.
No, NXT's been on Wednesday for years. But and when AEW, it was on the WWE Network on Wednesday nights. SmackDown was on Tuesdays. SmackDown Live for a little while. AEW or NXT Wednesdays.
They just went to live TV second.
Yeah. Well,
NXT was usually not live, right? It was always recorded.
I think that's the case. Yeah, I think they just had their takeovers live, but no, AEW originally wanted to do Tuesday nights. I think that was the original trademark was Tuesday Night Dynamite, and they had to go to Wednesday because of the NBA, and of course the rumors were NXT or WWE was like, oh, they came into our space, and it's like, what the fuck, dude. We're not going into your space, but
nobody. You know what? If people want to watch stuff, they watch it on demand now. Like the ratings don't really mean anything anymore because people are consuming things in so many different ways.
I think they mean a little bit. Like if something is truly must see, like the CM Punk debut, like people will watch it. But as far as week to week, like AEW does pretty good numbers on DVR. And I mean, my sister, this is anecdotal, but my sister and my brother-in-law, huge AEW fans, they never watch it live, bro. Even if it's big stuff is happening.
Right.
I mean, people have lives, they got stuff going on, and don't even get started on Rampage.
Coast, and unless you have DirecTV, you don't really even have.
Yeah, well, what's with that? I've heard people say, "Oh, but the West Coast." What does that mean?
Well, AEW comes on, 8 o'clock. If you just have regular cable out here, you have to watch it at 8 p.m., which is 11 p.m. on the East. Therefore, it's not happening live.
It doesn't start at 5 p.m.?
It does if you have like DirecTV.
Yeah.
You can watch like the East Coast feed.
That's kind of fucked up, dude. So you can hear about all the news before the show comes on?
Oh, but that's been an issue back in the day with Raw. We didn't get Raw till 9 p.m. in the Attitude Era when it had already been on the East Coast. But spoilers were a little harder, or let's just say not a little harder to come by, but a lot easier to avoid back then.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you had some friend calling you from, the East Coast. Oh my God, da-da-da-da.
Or you called the Wrestling Observer hotline. So
I guess, if they got it up there that fast.
No, yeah, that okay. I've heard that issue. I've heard Alvarez talk about that being on the West Coast. Oh, I watched the West Coast feed, so...
Right, that means he just watches it at 8 p.m. or whatever time it is on the East Coast. Yeah, because that's usually how it is. If you have, whatever our cable system out here is, you don't get that live feed, East Coast feed from DirecTV.
Yeah, okay. Now, understood.
Satellite,
now our listeners understand. But on the West Coast,
Yes.
those people are like, dude, we've already known. We've dealt with it.
But we also have, there's advantages. We get 10 a.m. football, which is great. 10 and 1 p.m. football games.
Okay.
Which are great because then you don't have to sacrifice your entire day. So.
And then when you guys have football on the West Coast, what does it start at like 10 p.m. on the East Coast? Like late games?
If there's like a Monday Night Football game, no, those always start at 5. They'll start 5. So that's what I'm saying is SmackDown was recording out here at 4:45 p.m. is when the show started. 5 o'clock. So you got all these people that work till 5 o'clock in LA.
Yeah.
Getting out to a show is very difficult unless they take a half day at work or something like that. If it's on the East Coast, that's an 8 p.m. start, and people have plenty of time to get there. So
I feel like Mountain Time has it best. We get it right at 6 p.m. Like after you're getting off work, not too late,
Yeah, right when you get home and put your keys down and settle down, you pop it on.
Yeah, that's
and you don't have to worry about going to bed too late. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's cool, man. I like that. But no, the West Coast, you guys are kind of getting screwed. So back to NXT, back to NXT and the beginnings of NXT. And we were talking about it earlier, but the beginnings of NXT was not a wrestling organization. You know what I mean? It was a fucking reality show. And,
right, with like challenges and all that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't watching it, and I don't think you were a big wrestling fan at that point, or at least you weren't watching hardcore. Did you ever catch one of these old shows, NXT?
I cannot say I did.
I'm guessing they weren't very good, man, because I never heard anyone even talk about them.
NXT wasn't on. It was on USA too, I believe, but NXT
Sci-Fi.
Or it might have
Sci-Fi
been
for
on
season 1.
WWE.com or whatever. NXT wasn't really on my radar probably until probably mid 2014.
By the time I
was getting back in
a wrestling group, a promotion.
Because you remember I think it was almost like that. Secret menu item,
Mm-hmm. Yep. I do remember, and we will definitely get into that here. So as far as this reality show, it was like an elimination style reality show. But the cool thing about NXT, this show, is that a lot of people got jobs from it in WWE, and a couple people have gone on to have pretty intense wrestling careers. So we look at the first season here, season 1. And these were the contestants: Wade Barrett, David Otunga, Justin Gabriel, Heath Slater, Darren Young, Skip Sheffield, but we know him as Ryback, Daniel Bryan, and Michael Tarver, Tyrone Evans. Wow, I don't even know him, to be honest. But, all these guys that I listed have had careers and are still wrestling today. Except David Otunga. He's not wrestling. He's like a WWE commentator backstage guy.
I don't even think he's doing that anymore. I haven't seen him for a while.
He is currently signed with them as a panelist. Yeah, but what does that mean? How does WWE release all these dudes when David Otunga still has a job? He must have done a lot of really great things for the company.
Well, I think for a while, he was married to Jennifer Hudson. So maybe they were hoping they can get her for something, so they kept her around for that.
That's got to be.
But he was doing commentary. He was doing like pre-show and like maybe those post shows they do. Talking smack and those. They probably use him for those things.
And let's be honest, on those pre-shows, bro, like, I don't know, man. They hire some people that is just questionable for those. But Skip Sheffield, Ryback with the Skip Sheffield cowboy gimmick there. And, and the show, they all had their pro wrestlers with them, you know what I mean, that sponsored them and gave them advice. So, it would suck if you got a really bad wrestler to help you out. I like this, though. Darren Young had CM Punk as his sponsor. That's pretty interesting that Fred Rosser had CM Punk helping him out. And Daniel Bryan had The Miz, which I've heard him talk about that. So,
and they've used that in storylines, don't forget, too.
They've
used that on that Talking Smack thing where...
Oh, yeah.
The Miz just went off on him, and it was tremendous. It was great.
We're not going to list every wrestler that ever did Talking Smack, but I will say that on Season 2, the winner was Low Ki. Low Ki, great New Japan wrestler. Seen him have incredible matches with Finn Balor or Fergal Devitt at the Prince Devitt. So it's kind of no surprise that he won, but some other notable names from that season were Titus O'Neil, Alex Riley, and of course Bray Wyatt was on that one as well, who had Cody Rhodes as his sponsor. So too bad his old sponsor hasn't called him up yet.
Side note, I saw Alex Riley probably a couple years ago at the Ralph's that's a block away from my house.
I like Alex Riley, dude. I think he's cool. I always thought he had a incredible look. I've heard people talk shit about him, but I always thought he was really cool.
I remember he tried to he grew out the beard and all that stuff and really tried to change things up for his right before they released him.
Speaking of NXT, he was an announcer in NXT.
Right. I know he was trying to change things up right before they released him. I don't know what that was, probably 2016 or something like that.
I mean, dude, I remember him announcing in NXT, and I was fascinated. They had a thing where he, ripped the headset off and went into the ring, and you never really see much of that, where the announcer straight up gets physical and tries to wrestle. So that was cool. He was also on the show Glow. He played the wrestler that the secondary chick had a little fling with. So there you go.
Right. Unfortunately, that show got canceled too.
They got canceled, just like He Who Shall Not Be Named, who was also on that show as Mr. Monopoly.
Yes.
So
he was.
They had a little thing after that. Now we're talking 2010, 2011 era here. Then they had some kind of bullshit all the old losers come back. They did another season where Caitlyn, who I follow on Instagram, and I recommend you all do, she won. And then they just, they did AJ Lee. She was cool. Johnny Fandango won, had a great career. So, and then just some other redemption bullshit like that. Not a whole lot to say about this reality show. I don't think. I mean, not a lot of people even talk about it to this day. However, there is something that came from this reality show that a lot of people have talked about. And I'm not talking about the NXT wrestling brand. It's something else. Do you know what I'm getting to here?
Go on a little bit.
It was a stable in wrestling that I've heard a lot of people say was an amazing angle.
The Nexus,
and
right?
the Nexus was an amazing time. So the Nexus debuted by just totally ripping apart the ring and all that stuff. Have you gone back and watched that?
I have not. I mean, at least maybe some of the pay-per-views I have, but definitely not any of those invasion angles kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a total invasion, and I've heard a lot of people say to this day it was one of the coolest things, coolest angles they've seen in modern WWE, because it was the 2010 Viewers' Choice episode of Raw. So the main event was Punk versus Cena, big match, right? and these guys just invaded and they attacked everyone. They attacked Justin Roberts. Obviously, we had Daniel Bryan choking out Justin Roberts with the tie, which got him fired from the company. And you had all these guys from NXT. So it's a really cool angle. And you think about it, this like weird reality show. Now, all of a sudden, like some of these contestants are just like here and fucking everybody up. So I thought that was kind of cool. And the Nexus actually had a good little history here, which it looks like CM Punk was the leader for a little bit.
Well, also, I always hear it's one of those things where people talk about how it was cut short for no reason. And
really?
Cena killed all of them when he took them all on 4-on-1 or something like that.
Oh, it was one of those Super Cena came out and just ended it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like after that they did a new Nexus. I'm reading here. Cena defeated Barrett in the main event, and after the match, dropped 23 steel chairs from the stage on him.
Yeah.
So there you go, man. Cena got his...
victim of Super Cena, right?
Yeah. So, I will say this. Darren Young has said that the Nexus was actually supposed to return, and they were booked to return as far as at WrestleMania 36, man. And a year later, a documentary about the Nexus was canceled, with Darren Young theorizing it was because Daniel Bryan left WWE. So, could be possible. Yeah, I'm just reading that. It's like, I didn't even know that, dude.
But he's kind of just a footnote in it. He's not really like a main... interesting.
That's true. Let's see. This is kind of funny too. In 2018, the Nexus reunited at Chikara, and they became the Nexus Alliance with Fred Rosser, PJ Black, and Tyrone Evans being a little trio.
What year was that?
That was 2018.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So shout out to the Nexus. I kind of am sad that we didn't get to see that happen live. It sounds like it would have been pretty fun. But, I mean, like any good thing in WWE, you know, what happens to it. Nexus also won Feud of the Year in PWI. One of the most hated wrestlers of the year. Rookie of the Year. So, there you go. And the only guy who was in it for its entirety was David Otunga, baby. So...
And he got wrestler, what was that?
He got Rookie of the Year.
Oh, okay.
I think it's funny, though, that John Cena was actually part of the group for, like, a few months.
Was he? I know that him and Otunga were, mismatched tag team champs for a minute,
Oh, boy. Wow. That's a little sad. Here we see that this is the funny thing I read here. I remember I talked about, NXT, the Nexus, and like so many of these people have been successful. Only 3 people are still employed with WWE consistently. Barrett, Cena, and Otunga. That's it.
Barrett's doing NXT, and he was gone for a couple years, it felt like.
He was, after I've got some bad news.
That was good stuff. I really
I don't know about that.
I liked it. And then he did some commentary for NWA for a minute when they had to fire Jim Cornette for making that inappropriate joke.
The chicken sandwich. Yeah, I remember that.
I don't remember the details.
Can you repeat the joke to us, please?
No, I don't care. I'm not going to look into it. Because even Cornette was great on that, too. NWA is one of those things that really, when they had that NWA Power weekly episodes on YouTube, I really enjoyed that show.
Nick Aldis promo is like one of the all-time great promos I've seen, honestly.
That was such a very underratedly good product back then. And they even had a few shows going during the start of the pandemic that helped get us through the beginning.
No, dude, it's still not bad, bro. Like, honestly, I saw their women's show a few months ago. It was pretty damn good, actually.
It's just, they went completely behind a paywall now, right? For the most part. With Fight TV and stuff, so...
It was definitely a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I think they've kind of gone behind a paywall now. I could be wrong, but when Power was just a YouTube show.
Oh yeah, it was cool. They had the fake ads. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I really enjoyed that. And they were even doing these kind of little vignette style shows during the pandemic that were pretty entertaining as well. Like, you know, Eli Drake at the time even was doing like a little podcast, and it was kind of fun to watch from his apartment and all that stuff.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was actually really entertaining.
I liked him a lot.
NXT. I know they gave him kind of a lousy name with LA Knight, but
I think it's a cool name. He's from LA now, even though he's like a Southern guy, isn't he?
No, I don't know where he's from. I think he's probably from somewhere like Maryland or something like that.
It's weird because his name is LA Knight, and he has like almost like the Golden Knights logo, like the Knight thing, and it's like he's not from LA. And like, why is he a Knight?
He was living out in LA until he signed with NXT. So he was doing a lot of bar wrestling. Even my kids used to get a haircut from this woman at this barber shop. She cut his hair and stuff like that. So, and I know he lives in the area. I saw him at a gym I was going to for a while too. So he lived in this area. So I think that's where he gets the LA thing from.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like Eli LA. So, you know,
he was looking for that thing. You go Eli Drake, LA Knight. He was looking for that.
I think so. Yeah,
3-syllable or whatever name.
I agree.
Dummy. Yeah.
So
he's a good talker. So
I like him. He's cool.
Yeah, me too.
Although, you know, he is considered the old heads on NXT, which is funny because he's not been in the company that long.
I think he was in NXT probably circa 13, 14-ish.
Really?
And then they released him, and then that's when he went to Impact.
Yeah,
I can't remember. He wasn't Eli Drake. I think he wasn't Eli Drake. He might have been somebody else, some other name.
Yeah, okay. You know, funny he made is he actually was, his first WWE appearance was in 2008 on ECW. Teaming with Gene Snitsky against Crime Time, but that was just jobber work, right?
Right.
So,
what they call it, day laborer kind of work.
So he was called Slate Randall and defeated Yoshitatsu, All Japan Wrestling's Yoshitatsu, in a dark match for NXT, and did a little bit. Okay.
Slate Randall.
Baron Corbin. Yeah. I see that. Okay,
so
cool.
He was. So he's had a little bit of a run there before. But I don't know. He seems like one of those guys that Vince would love. Can talk. Great look.
He's not super tall, though, but he does have a great look.
Not super tall. But that's what I thought. I thought Vince would fall in love with another guy like EC3, which never really came to fruition either.
Yeah, that's true. And I was watching him tonight, actually. He's on Final Battle tonight. He was wrestling with Rocky Romero and Brody King. Did you see any of that at all?
No. I should check it out, though, later.
I mean, it's like their last big show, I guess, right?
Unfortunate Bandito came down with COVID, and who replaced him?
Jay Lethal. Yeah, okay. I like Jay Lethal.
Oh, Jay Lethal's great. So NXT kind of carried on from there, right? So what do we got going on next? How did NXT evolve from show?
Well,
Nexus?
It was FCW that turned into NXT in 2012. So FCW, this was their developmental territory. Before that, it was like way back in the day, it was Ohio Valley. And WWE has always had, for listeners that might not be aware, have had like a developmental territory where wrestlers go and they learn the ropes, they learn the way.
Literally.
Literally. And in FCW, you had Dusty Rhodes working with the talent and a lot of people like that we know today, maybe Bill DeMott. But FCW, you go back and watch FCW, you can see stuff like Jon Moxley versus Seth Rollins. Roman Reigns was there back, so the whole Shield. Jon Moxley,
Bray Wyatt was there too.
Yep,
the Wyatts were there.
And it's funny because in the old FCW matches too, you can see like all the WWE posters in the background. But the whole thing with these developmental groups, and this is specifically with OVW, is what I've heard, is that like they don't want you to be too well known. I mean, they want you to learn there. and it's kind of what they're turning into more. But the idea of televising developmental was kind of foreign because they want you to do a debut and then get big. They didn't want you to get big on developmental, but I guess times have changed now, and
it's impossible to have that type of format now.
It is because of the web, right? I mean, it's always going to pop up. Otherwise, I mean, if you're big enough and you're good enough, someone's going to film you wrestling, and word's going to get out.
Especially if it's under the WWE umbrella.
Especially.
People are going to want to know about it, right?
And we know that WWE will try to monetize everything they can. You know, I've heard Nick Khan say if we could do 8 hours of Raw, we would. So it's not surprising that it's on TV now, but it wasn't originally. This FCW, they did tape stuff, but it wasn't on the WWE network. So this change happened. They renamed FCW, and they moved it to Full Sail University. God bless the old Full Sail. What a great little venue that was, huh? For a little while there.
I really enjoyed what they did there, and I guess just to give people the full context of OVW, basically that's known for producing Randy Orton, John Cena,
Batista,
Brock Lesnar, and Batista.
I think a lot of people. Shelton Benjamin was there. Bobby Lashley was there. Brock was there for a little bit.
Under the control of Jim Cornette, who I think that's where he slapped the hell out of Santino Marella, right?
I think so. I remember Cena saying, he's like, the first time I came into OVW, I was seeing like Brock Lesnar do shooting star press and fucking Lashley, this huge guy, and how intimidating it was. So, that was OVW back in the 2000s, right? Early 2000s.
Right.
Developmental.
Now, which I think is currently run and owned and operated by Al Snow.
It's still a thing, but WWE pulled that contract, and I think part of the reason they wanted to do NXT instead of FCW, going a little later, is that they can run NXT completely, right? Where FCW was FCW. FCW might still run, and I'm not sure about that. Let's see, FCW.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see it here. Let's see. Okay, so it's not around anymore, and it was completely rebranded and became NXT. But it used to be an NWA members championship wrestling from Florida from 1961. So it was not owned by WWE, and they wanted WWE, and as they should, they want to run their developmental. And so in 2012, it changed. They revamped the show and wanted it to run exclusively on new talent. So we talk about this very, very early NXT from, this was 2012, I guess, to 2014. What do you remember about the earliest NXT from what you watched? And we're talking...
From what I watched. Yeah. Okay, so...
Bo Dallas era, Cesaro.
See, I was even probably a little after that, Cassius Ohno. The first time I can remember in my head right now with NXT coming on my radar was a Charlotte Flair versus Natalya match.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
With Rick and Brett in their corners, respectively.
Oh, I think that was Was that the later one or no? I remember that match, and that was like a big... That was like that and Sami Zayn, who is like a key member of this early NXT crew. Sami Zayn and Cesaro 2 out of 3 falls match was one that everyone was like, oh, it's so good. You got to watch these matches. That's what originally got me in there. So that was probably, 2013-14, right?
Yeah, I think at least 2014 for me, but that first thing the Sami Zayn Neville program they were doing, and of course that I just remember with Brett and Flair in Charlotte and Natalya's corner.
And the listeners got to understand something. We say Charlotte, we all fucking know Charlotte. We've heard her talk about a million times. Justin and I didn't know Charlotte, right? Except that she was Ric Flair's daughter.
Well, yeah, I don't think anyone really did.
No,
I mean,
well, if you'd been watching FCW or
Indies.
NXT, right, you had seen her before that.
Well,
but
yeah, but I mean, she was purely. She wasn't like doing indies years before or anything. She was a pure, women's volleyball player converted into a.
Now she'd been on WCW TV and stuff like that, but not as a wrestler.
Well, as
obviously,
a kid, it's just background, and as herself playing Rick's daughter, really.
Ashley Flair. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think when you first saw it? Did you enjoy it? Did you like the format? The wrestlers?
Like I said, it was like a secret menu item. I felt like I was ordering an animal style burger. This is different, and it was where matches were the emphasis rather than storylines and silly kind of, it just felt different, right? It just was something that you felt like you were the only person watching and you discovered this big secret, right?
Yeah, definitely. There was no AEW. New Japan was a whole different thing. And as far as American wrestling goes, all we really had was WWE and then other kind of indie type of stuff, like Ring of Honor and, PWG, stuff like that. But, yeah, I agree. Now, it's funny. No one told me about it or anything. I just saw it on the network. Is that kind of how you came upon it, or had you read about it?
It must have just been on the network. I don't even remember how I came across, we're talking now, almost, 8-10 years ago. That this was discovered, right? So, by me. So
9 years ago when it started, man. That's crazy.
9 years ago it started. 2014 is when it's on my radar, because that's when I, got back in from my lapse.
Okay.
So, I think just perusing the network. Is where you came about, and then when they had that weekly show, you would just catch up on it there.
Well, and it was cool too, because you're cruising the network, you're looking through it, and you're like, "What the fuck is this?" It's like, okay, it's called NXT. It's like, I don't get it. Is it WWE? And I kind of got the gimmick at first. It was like next, right? Like next. I mean, we never said that word, but NXT, it don't stand for anything. It's just next.
That was my impression when I saw that as what it was called, and then kind of finding out that's where the Wyatt family and the Shield started, and they were quote unquote brought up like it was truly a minor league affiliate that that you'd have in baseball or hockey.
Yeah, that's kind of how I thought of it as well. But I'll say this, man, I watched it and I liked the small atmosphere with the Full Sail, and the wrestling was just really good, man. It was good. Yeah. It was better than a lot of your regular Raw matches. It was also the beauty of NXT back in the day was 1 hour. This little show that you could watch, and it just breezed by.
And honestly, you could credit NXT in that format and that presentation as what just absolutely exploded the indie movement.
Well, I feel like NXT, and from what I've heard, is this was WWE wanting to create their own indie, kind of.
It seemed like it. They were trying to make something that was honestly, they were kind of heading in that direction. But if you're talking 2014, that's when they're that it really did have the feel of a PWG.
Oh yeah.
Of a Ring of Honor, a response to Ring of Honor, and obviously, the way they were building NXT, they really were targeting Ring of Honor. I mean, obviously they were. Whether they admit it or not, they stole half their talent.
Yeah, especially over time. That's
if you want to just look at the main roster and just WWE now, I would say probably more than half of them are tied to 3 organizations: PWG, Ring of Honor, and NXT.
Yeah, man, I agree. Yeah. Do you know who the first NXT champion was?
Was that Seth Rollins?
It was. You know who he beat for the NXT Championship in the finals of their tournament? This was the funny one. It was Jinder Mahal.
Jinder Mahal. Okay, never mind.
Who, when I first saw Jinder Mahal, I was like, he seemed like the jobber of all jobbers. And that's a whole different story. We could probably do a whole episode on Jinder Mahal.
Yeah, definitely.
Is it the Jinder Mahal incident?
I mean, there's a guy who went through a transformation. I'll just put it that way.
I feel like that's a worse incident than the mass transit one. But, that's terrible to say. I'm sorry. It was Seth Rollins. Big E, Langston back then, was an FCW guy who won it from him. And then it was Bo Dallas. Now, I remember people saying that Bo Dallas was so much better in NXT. I didn't watch him a lot, but I heard he would give slideshows and had these great little presentations, which didn't really work at all on the main roster. I mean, the guy was like bad from the get-go.
I liked Bo Dallas, so I disagree with you there.
Okay, on the main roster,
I liked Bo Dallas in the main roster too. I loved all that stuff.
Well, I'll let his achievements speak for themselves. I mean, what does he even do nowadays?
They could have done a lot more with him, and maybe a lot of that was him. But I was a fan of all those Rotundo kids. I know maybe you weren't, so we're just have opposite opinions there. That being said, I didn't really see any of his work in NXT, so. I know he was the champ there for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I think probably dropped it to Neville before he got called up to the main roster. But then he did that whole Believe gimmick, which I dug it. I dug it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there's got to be one fan, right? Or else he wouldn't sell any T-shirts.
Those oblivious, cocky heels. I love that stuff.
Huge fan of the B Team, were you?
Not by then, because that's when they were kind of admitting their mediocrity, and I don't. That was. I thought it was kind of cute, but not really. Not as big as Believe.
Well,
I thought he should have had his own stable and everything.
Really, he should have had his own. He should have had his. Yeah, all sorts of wrestlers.
Just a bunch of jobbers telling him how great they were, and they
that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, come on.
Almost as good a gimmick as Adam Rose.
You know what's funny? I was just thinking about him too.
Talk about old school NXT, huh? And a guy who actually went on the main roster, sadly, had a little bit of a Jeff Hardy issue there. He had a domestic abuse, didn't he?
He was arrested, and ultimately, it really killed his career. But he was cleared of it very quickly, almost, if I remember correctly. That was another guy who I thought, great look, a little bit different of a gimmick. They could have really taken it in another direction.
They could have turned the bunny story into something great.
I really think they could have made him into this kind of like cult leader that had a dark side.
I feel like Bo Dallas should have been the cult leader, honestly. But I
either one of them could have worked with that, but a lot of the who's who were the Rosebuds, right? Now?
Oh God. I don't know who were the Rosebuds. Who were the Rosebuds?
Becky Lynch.
Yeah.
Braun Strowman. I remember a lot of those the stars of today were
Braun
extras
Strowman.
In that skit. I think I remember Simon Gotch in it, Braun Strowman.
Alexa Bliss.
Alexa Bliss, there you go.
Let's see, Alexa Bliss, Becky Lynch, Braun Strowman, Bull Dempsey. Let's see, who else do we know? Deanna Purrazzo.
There you go.
Let's see. Mandy Leon. Nikki Storm. Who is that? Nikki Cross.
Nikki Cross.
Nikki Cross.
There you go.
Scarlett Bordeaux, Simon Gotch, Tessa Blanchard.
There you go.
And Thea Trinidad, otherwise known as Zelina Vega. So, wow. Good call on that. The Rosebuds.
Yeah.
So,
that was a gimmick they really focused on in the E60 feature, right?
Tell me about it.
They did a few years ago, that ESPN were focused on Leo Kruger. That's what his gimmick was.
Leo Kruger, South African.
Adam Rose, he had the son that had that condition, right? And was it Xavier Woods? And I can't remember who the third was. Was it Tyler Breeze?
As far as what goes? Oh, the E60?
E60.
I didn't watch that E60 all the way through.
It was excellent.
I saw the Adam Rose part and thought that was good, but I didn't. Xavier Woods was not part of New Day back then, right? And I wasn't as fascinated by him as I would be now. He's become like huge. Okay, he was.
It was towards the beginning of the New Day. Because they've been doing New Day a while. New Day started in like 2014.
Talk about a whole episode. I mean, dude, we could talk about how I thought the gimmick was completely racist when it started. Come to find out that those three dudes put it together themselves. So it was not. But they were originally, one of their names was the Amen. The Amen. Get it? The Amen.
Yeah. I think they just kind of they wanted to do something together.
As Steve Austin would say, they took chicken shit and turned it into chicken salad for sure, though, as far as their gimmick and stuff.
They made a Popeye's chicken sandwich.
They made it, future Hall of Famers there, and currently one of the biggest acts in the company, each individually.
One of the greatest tag teams of all time.
Yes, so, and that all gets a start in FCW as well, as Big E was the second champion. And Xavier Woods, whatever he was called back then, Creed or what, I don't know what his name was.
Guy has a great shoot name that could be used.
What is his shoot name?
Austin Watson.
Austin Watson,
I believe. Yeah.
That is a good one, huh?
We can do a whole list of wrestlers that have better shoot names than wrestling names. That could be
you know what, dude? Don't get me started, because I was in a Voice Wrestling chat a couple weeks ago, and we were reading off the new NXT names, and they've gotten worse and worse and worse. So bad to the point where we played a game. I was doing a random name generator and having the guys guess, is this a random name generated or a NXT name? And no one knew.
Oh, that's funny. Or your middle name and the street you grew up on.
Yeah,
that kind of
like that is much better than the names they're giving referees now. They're giving referees fucking fake names, bro. Lashandra, and shit like that. So that was, this era of Seth Rollins, Big E, Bo Dallas, I feel like that was its own little NXT era, almost pre-Takeover NXT. And so after that, we kind of move into Takeover NXT, but we're going to take a quick break. We're back here. How was your break, Justin?
It was wonderful. I just saw the Kings won, and
they did. Who'd they play?
They played the Minnesota Wild, who had won 8 games in a row. So
isn't the Wild generally good? Like Minnesota's a hockey place.
At least they give the Kings trouble every year. I didn't go to the game tonight. My friend took his wife, so
it's the ongoing story is Justin's watching of the Kings live.
Yeah, I actually didn't watch it tonight. I just kind of I've been to a lot of games lately, so and this came up, so I just kind of followed it with on Twitter and stuff. But back to NXT, where did we leave off?
NXT. So we left off at the first little bit of NXT, moving on to the first, I guess what I would call Takeover Era, and this is kind of when the Takeover started. And quickly, these takeovers became must-see wrestling events. But I mean, I don't know. These are, for me, man, honestly, some of these beginning takeovers are some of the most memorable wrestling moments for me. And honestly, I think some of those takeovers I almost enjoy more than I enjoy some AEW pay-per-views nowadays. They were so good. Do you remember these takeovers kind of when they started? And they did the takeovers in Full Sail.
I just remember looking at the cards and thinking of how number one, every match was just looked great.
Yeah.
And then there would only be 4 to 5 matches on the card. And you're like, is that enough to fill a 2-hour show? And you're damn right it was. And it was just really quality over quantity.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm looking at the second one. It's like the card doesn't look as good as what I'm talking about, but it was kind of getting there. The Ascension, which is a well-known terrible wrestling team. A lot of fans from how bad the team was. You remember the Ascension?
I remember them being kind of badasses in NXT and then just an absolute joke once
in the main roster, dude. These were guys that got paid for months to do nothing on the main roster. How lucky is that, you know?
Well, I mean, I didn't really I just remember the way they were presented on NXT as kind of like an acolyte type of group where they just leveled everybody. But by the time they were brought up and they had the lights shined on them brighter, you know, I used to, you know, think of NXT to the main roster that sometimes NXT, the way I don't know if this is a negative way to say it, but when you were watching people in NXT, it was almost like the beer goggles. And then when they, you know, brought them up to the main roster, for some reason, they just were. I don't know if they were just presented differently and they just did not look as good.
I honestly think they were told to wrestle differently on the main roster, man. I think that they wrestled a different house style. I really think that's the case because you can't tell me that Shinsuke Nakamura, you know, we had beer goggles on when he was in NXT because when this guy went to the main roster, like we had seen him before.
But I'm saying in a way where, for whatever reason, it just wasn't the same when they came up, you know? And
it never has been, man. And
it's very few guys have made it over and were able to, you know, maintain that for very long. There was always a little bit of a crossover where it worked for a while, but it was almost like if anyone from NXT came over and was getting too popular, they would just like suicide bomb him or something. They would not let it get too far.
Well,
you know?
Why don't we use this opportunity to talk about call-ups because this has been one of the most controversial parts of NXT.
Well, first of all, just kind of starting by saying that the era of NXT that we're very fond of and what built up its name, for the most part, can be credited to Triple H, right?
Oh, yeah.
Who was
there were other writers
behind it
as well that I don't remember their names. I'm sorry to say, but I remember there were takeover shows that were so fucking good, and it would come out like people would be like, "Who's the writer for that?" You know, because they were just incredible. You know, Takeover Brooklyn, which was just one of WWE's best pay-per-views of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I scribbled down a few of my favorite things that, you know, we could kind of go through as we, dive in a little more.
Yeah, definitely. Before we get to that, like, as far as these call-ups go, man, I think you and I would agree, and all the wrestling fans know that, in a way, the call-up is a sign of death for an NXT wrestler, in a way. As you said, there's been some success, but I mean, you know, all I have to say is one word, man, and that's Ricochet. I mean,
yeah,
you know, Triple H used these guys to their strengths, and yeah, go ahead.
Can you tell me a timestamp in your mind when for a while you wanted to see these guys come up and be on Raw and SmackDown, right?
Yeah,
and then it got to a point where, like, you know what? I don't want them to ever bring this guy up.
I think the clear line there was between Aleister Black and Tommaso Ciampa, because we had all these people go up to the main roster. Only some had success, right? So the only ones that were really successful were Kevin Owens and Finn Balor. Besides that, man, all these guys that were called up before then, Seth Rollins, Big E, but that was like super early NXT, and they both went on
before NXT was stealing shows and outperforming the main roster the night before in the same building with these takeovers. And there was a few guys that a few performers that came out of NXT that end up doing better on the main roster.
Tyson Kidd, I think. He was with
that's the early
Cesaro.
one that I didn't catch, but people like, maybe Baron Corbin.
Yeah, Baron Corbin was better on the main roster.
Has far one person who I kind of thought Elias was another one that wasn't.
And he was called up early, too. He was one of those people that was kind of called up quick, so I had a feeling that they really wanted
Vince
him.
Must have saw him.
Yeah.
And there was one that I actually kind of predicted that I thought would be way big. There's a few that I thought would be way bigger on the main roster, and Lacey Evans was one of them. I know she's not there.
Well, women are like a whole different story, man. I feel like women, because you got the 4 horsewomen who are all some of the best top wrestlers in the world now, as far as women go. Nikki Ash, who had her gimmick,
Alexa
her
Bliss,
crazy,
who was
crazy.
Just a manager at the time.
Yeah, a manager.
Blake and
Wesley was it Wesley?
Blake and
Chris Murphy. Blake and Murphy.
Yeah.
Carmella was kind of a manager for Enzo and Cass.
Yeah.
So the women were used, and all the old quote unquote divas were kind of pushed out. I mean, I think even Paige was part of NXT very early.
Paige was NXT Women's Champ. Don't forget when she debuted with the title still.
And she was.
She beat AJ Lee in that little impromptu thing right after WrestleMania 30.
Mm-hmm. And she actually beat Emma in the finals of an 8-woman tournament to win that.
There you go.
So yeah, but the women, I mean, they've been used generally well, except maybe Kairi Sane.
They spearheaded what women's wrestling became over the next few years. Was all because of NXT, at least in North America. They've been this whole reason why women's wrestling is being so taken seriously now, and it's must see. And you had, women, you had females headline WrestleMania was because of NXT.
I agree. So as far as women goes, the call-ups were generally good. I'm looking at the list of women champions. The only 2 that I see that maybe were misused or not used all the way correctly were Ember Moon and Shayna Basler, who is still on the roster, so it's yet to be seen. But Ember Moon wasn't really given much on main roster for some reason. And we've talked about her. We both would love to see her in AEW. And Shayna Basler they kind of changed her character where she was this badass woman in NXT, and she's a little different now. She's doing some comedy matches and stuff. So we'll see what happens to Io Shirai, man. That's going to be a big question mark, right?
Well, I don't see her getting called up. Is she called up?
That's what I said. We'll see.
Yeah.
Raquel Gonzalez. I mean, all the women now, which half of them you probably don't know. You got Toxic Attraction, and honestly, they bring out a new woman every week, and I'm like, who the fuck is that?
Well, I guess that's what the show is now.
Casey Catanzaro, who's been in NXT for years and years. Who else has been in NXT? What's her name? Dakota Kai, dude, has been in NXT for like fucking 6 years.
Yeah, she's good. She's evolved her character here and there, because I think when I first noticed her, she was basically like a Bayley clone. She was, yeah. She was like the cute, happy, go lucky girl.
And
she showed some range in the last few years.
When you think of the NXT Women's title, is there a certain wrestler that comes to mind?
Asuka.
Yeah, I totally agree. Asuka, who was undefeated in NXT. I mean, she held the championship for how long? 510 days, which was 100 days more than Shayna Basler. So
and she beat everybody.
Yeah, she was,
except for maybe, did she ever beat Charlotte during that run? I know she beat Bayley, Nia Jax.
I think she came up, wrestled Charlotte at WrestleMania, and then finally lost. She won the Royal Rumble,
snapped her undefeated streak, and that was a very appropriate person to lose to for the undefeated streak.
Definitely Asuka, who I believe honestly is the best used Japanese wrestler in WWE, maybe WWE history.
It's hard to argue with that.
Being that she's won like every single title in the company, dude.
Yeah, she has,
including Money in the Bank and Royal Rumble. And she's just still going. Yeah. She's injured now, I think.
She's healing up from some type of arm or something injury, but I mean, she's my age. She's 40, so
still going.
We'll see how much.
She wears a thong over her shorts, dude. Who thought of that? Genius.
Revolutionary.
Revolutionary. So yeah, I mean, we talk about bad call-ups. Ricochet, man. Is Ricochet not like the ultimate example, though? I mean, this guy who was one of the most talked about wrestlers in the whole world outside of WWE.
You want to talk about opposite ends of the spectrum. Let's talk about where Ricochet's from their famous match in the Best of the Super Juniors in 2017 or something. Ricochet and Will Osprey.
Yeah,
and think about who won that match? It wasn't even.
Well, they've had a few, but had a few, but there was that one that was really famous, and I think Will Ospreay won with the Os Cutter.
Okay. Well, anyway, guys that we're seeing pretty much as peers, like even level, right?
That's like the two best high flyers in the world right now in New Japan.
Right. And two of the most exciting wrestlers in the world to this day. Just think about the direction where Ricochet is basically a mid-card jobber.
If that, bro. Mid-card is being really nice about it. Like, he's a low-card wrestler. He's a 205 guy. Which,
he's a spot guy.
Yeah. Look, I've heard people say, "Fuck, I'd be a 205 guy," and it's like I would too. Sure, but I'm not a professional wrestler with aspirations. You know what I mean?
But if you do not give a dynamic promo, that's what happens to you in the biggest company in the world, WWE.
What about Bobby Lashley? What about Brock Lesnar?
Unless
you're 6'5" and huge,
right? Unless you're just something undeniably physically.
But Ricochet has imposing. That, bro. He has he doesn't have the height physical imposing, but he's got the moves physically imposing. And I mean, Reggie doesn't cut promos, absolutely. But now this guy is being put on TV.
He doesn't have that, stop and turn your head at an airport, like they say. That probably Bruce Pritchard will tell you, that quality. And he doesn't give a great promo.
He is actually bad at promos. I'm just gonna say that. Like the dude, his voice is no good, and he cannot promo at all. But that's the job of the promoter, is to hide those weaknesses, man. Right? How often did you see him promo in New Japan? Never.
Well, how often did you see him promo as Prince Puma in Lucha Underground?
It's just
he never talked.
And you know what? You hide the weakness, dude. He doesn't need to talk because he speaks very loudly in the ring. And
they gave him a good entrance in NXT too. He had a good.
Oh, dude, his entrance was epic.
Yeah.
With the lights and when the bright light would come up and he's just like frozen in his pose. He felt like a superhero, dude. They always, and WWE has tried to do the superhero gimmick. He was the superhero back then, and it wasn't forced.
And I wouldn't say it's like, I still think that he has a shot at having a run because I feel like they're keeping him around for a reason. But I also think that they know that if somebody like AEW or New Japan get him back, that they're going to just, stop the rocket.
Dude, I pray that he leaves, man. We'll see what happens. His girlfriend is in WWE. He seems like a very loyal and nice guy. And
he does.
He does seem like someone that, if they gave him, we'd love to have you around for more. We're going to push you to the moon, blah, blah, blah. He seems like he would smile and shake their hand, just to be honest. I mean,
I think one of the first PWG show I went to, it was him and Akira Tozawa.
Oh, shit. Another kind of misused guy there, but.
Yeah, but still has a job, so good for him, man.
Akira Tozawa didn't do NXT, did he?
Yeah, I think he did.
Did he? Okay.
But I think they brought him up right away because he was on the main roster pretty quickly.
Seems like a 205 Live guy, from what I remember.
He was a 205 Live guy. Maybe he went right to 205. I don't remember if he was in.
I'm taking a quick look. He's a Cruiserweight Championship guy.
Yeah, and a 24/7 guy for a while as well.
And then he went right to 205 Live.
Interesting.
Drew Gulak. So yeah, that is pretty interesting. But if you would call that a call up, that's another kind of misused talent. Now he is funny ninja guy number 3. So
right. He's like an extra in Rush Hour or something like that.
Yeah. So I'm looking at time here. We don't have time to go over every era in NXT, to be honest. Something I want to ask is some of the best NXT matches you've ever seen.
Right. Should I just go off my list?
You have your list there? Why don't we take...
Yeah, I have a list. I have about 7 or 8. So my first one was any DIY match.
Yeah.
They just put together a string of just absolutely, might be the greatest, I don't know how to explain it this way, but maybe the best tag team run ever was DIY and NXT.
Well, when you talk about
DIY,
DIY, man, you got to bring up the Revival, right? And we talk about another botched call-up, but the DIY and the Revival, and actually around that time, also the Authors of Pain,
I was going to say, they even put AOP with some good matches.
That was a great trio of tag teams there. You also had Lurch and Orkin, a good tag team as well. And Oni Lorcan is really underrated, great wrestler. Biff Busick.
Yes.
And yeah, DIY was definitely awesome. Even more, really why you got to watch this recent War Games match, because they go back to DIY. They have a reunion.
Okay, I will watch it now.
Yeah.
I was at this match, and this is why it probably stood out. War Games 2018, Black and Gargano was a great match.
Really, you went to it?
I was at the War Games 2018. It was at Staples Center.
Wow.
I went to that and Black Gargano was the match of the night. And just one of the best matches I've ever seen in person, for sure.
Wow. That's awesome.
Then we talked about Ricochet and Cole at Adam Cole at Takeover 4.
Okay.
Pete Dunne, Tyler Bateman for the UK
It's Tyler Bate, but
Tyler Bate. Sorry,
that is
Tyler Bateman. Tyler Bateman's pretty cool too.
That's on my list as well. So the Dunne versus
Sami Zayn Nakamura.
Hang on, the Dunne versus Bate match.
Too far ahead, huh?
I want to talk about real quick. That match was so fucking good, and we didn't really know Tyler Bate that well.
Yeah,
and he was so young at the time. He's still young, actually, because I think he was 20 or something back then.
He was literally 20, which is like an infant for the pro wrestling industry.
And you had JR calling it, which was awesome. He came out to his Oklahoma theme and all that stuff. So JR calling this match of these young guys, and another botched non-call-up with Tyler Bate. I mean, maybe they're waiting for him to turn 35. But God, dude, what a talented guy. His match later with Walter was awesome.
Yep.
But, he's been put in a tag team, and I don't think he's been given an opportunity to thrive. Maybe he loves England. Could be, right? Could be like Walter.
It could be it. I mean, I think that's what took him a while to get Pete Dunne to really commit to being over here. But we talk about the spin-off NXT UK as well, which I guess we can kind of footnote a little bit. But there's a whole NXT UK. They tried to make an NXT Japan, but it didn't work out.
Well, they tried to make NXT... The original plan had a map. Do you remember this? And there was NXTs placed in Europe and Mexico and South America and Japan and China. This was the original goal. I mean... really, Japan soured it because Japan was like, fuck no. And then they tried to buy Stardom, and Stardom was like, fuck you. And they got sold to Bushiroad instead. So that didn't work out. Japan being a company that supposedly, as far as wrestling goes, they're really, and I guess other stuff too, they're not really into outside influences.
Right,
so,
right.
For the
not
better.
Very inclusive.
For the better.
For the better, yeah. In this instance, for sure.
Bate versus Dunne, amazing match.
Yes.
Nakamura versus
Sami Zayn.
What a fucking incredible match. This was the match where Fight Forever was chanted.
Yeah.
first time I had heard that. And man, now it's overused, right? You see Cesaro fucking wrestling somebody and fight forever on Raw. Dude, this match was so good. And there was one spot that I can never get out of my mind. Sami Zayn had this amazing move he did, and he doesn't do it anymore, and it's sad. He did a tornado DDT where he would dive through the corner of the ropes. You remember that move?
Yes.
It was like the most fascinating El Generico, lucha move. He dived through the one rope to the other rope, the corner, dive through, and he always killed people with it. And he did it to Nakamura, and Nakamura kicked him in the fucking head, dude, right as he was diving through. He sold it perfectly.
I would imagine maybe Sami, I know Sami's had some serious shoulder injuries. Maybe he doesn't do it for that, because of that.
I think he doesn't do it because he's a babyface, dude. Or he's a heel.
Right, but I think also he had some pretty bad shoulder injuries and stuff. Maybe
from celebrating when he went against John Cena.
Right.
Talk about botch call-ups, and he says, he likes it, and this is really who I am. I'm all paranoid and stuff, and I'm I'm like Seinfeld and Larry David, and I don't know, man. Sami Zayn, this babyface character they called him the heart and soul of NXT Uk, and now Johnny Gargano's taken that title, but I mean, this babyface, you go back and watch his match and you see a totally different wrestler. So maybe it's him, maybe it's both, him and the company, probably is. But
I've liked I've always liked Sami Zayn, even to his current incarnation, because I know that that is how he is, because I've heard him on podcasts and heard stories about him being just like this really neurotic kind of person, so it makes sense what he's doing now. But yeah, that's Sami Zayn Nakamura. What a perfect way and perfect dance partner to bring up Nakamura to debut Nakamura with, and
it was amazing. The new Nakamura theme, we all had it in our heads. It was so cool. A dude with the violin comes out and plays it at one point,
So I don't know if this other one counts because it wasn't technically an NXT show, but one that I'll always remember just because I stayed up till late. My friend came over in the middle of the night and we watched this together live, was Finn Balor and Kevin Owens in Japan.
Well, that was an NXT match because it was for the NXT title. So, yes, another great match. Kevin Owens threw the flowers when they gave him the flowers.
Oh, one of my favorite spots of all time pre-match spots.
And I think we've talked about it on this show before. It was so disrespectful.
It was great. It's in Sumo Hall, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little
great match.
Little Easter egg, not really, but a little thing to say about that show is you had Chris Jericho against Neville, right? At the time.
Yeah.
And Chris Jericho wrestled a Japanese style on that show, which just shows how good Chris Jericho is. I remember he was doing all these strong style chops and slaps, and then instead of just the walls of Jericho, he puts him in the extended knee to the head walls of Jericho that he's not really allowed to do in regular WWE. You know what I mean? The crank the neck, and that show is great. If you haven't watched that show, you should go back and watch it.
Beast in the East, I believe, because they had a little 8-second match with Kofi and Brock Lesnar, and I think was the main event Cena and Ziggler?
Was it not the NXT Championship, huh? Or was it not?
No, the NXT Champ. I believe it was Cena and Ziggler or some. I think Cena was the champ at the time, because this was a month. I don't remember 100%, but
no. It was Ziggler and Cena against Kane and Wade Barrett. Actually, weirdly enough,
that was the main event.
It was the 7th match, 23, the longest match on the show. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like, really, that was the main event. But like you said, it wasn't. It was kind of like a house show type of vibe, like a special event.
And it was a hot crowd. It was a really great show.
That
might have been one of my favorite things that WWE has done. I just remember because my wife and the kids, they were in Japan at the time.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, they weren't anywhere near the show, but I just remember I kind of texted my friend, that day, like, hey, man, why don't you come over and watch it? And he did.
Wow.
And I set my alarm, and I woke up and watched it, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when it came on here.
Yeah, that show was great, and it had a whole different look to it. The fans were all cosplaying and stuff.
And I do remember Michael Cole actually calling a great show, too. If you want to hear some of Michael Cole's best work, watch that show without Vince in his ear.
The only thing I really disliked about that show was first of all, when they chose Kofi Kingston, he was not New Day, big guy at the time. And
no, he was New Day. They were heels. They were just
they were heels. Mode. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because New Day did go against the Lucha Dragons at that show. So they were, but the thing is that like, I didn't want a squash match. I actually wanted like a cool match. I was like, dude, what if Kofi like actually does some cool shit? At least for maybe like 5 minutes, right? Gets a little offense. Like at least give him that. But he just ran away, and it would be a precursor to him getting his ass beat years later for the title. So. Great show, great NXT themed show. Beast in the East, go watch that one. What other matches do you got?
I got Gargano and Andrade.
What do you remember about that? Because I don't remember that match in particular.
Just
that it was awesome.
Out. Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. And then, of course, I think which is the one that really... not only for female wrestlers, but just put NXT out of that kind of... It really launched it into the mainstream.
Can I guess what you're going to say?
Yes.
Is this Sasha versus Bayley New York?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome match. And, like, you're watching these women, and you and I had seen the Divas matches before that, but you're like,
yeah,
oh, shit, this is, like, main event status match right here.
This is the most important match in arguably all of female wrestling history, women's history, but
Stardom fans are sneering at you right now, like, what the fuck did you...
at least for North America, or Stardom, or just any of those matches from the 80s or 90s, but...
In North America, because it was... I guess, women's wrestling in Japan was massive in the 80s and 90s, but as far as North America goes, this was huge, dude. And, I mean... This NXT women's title was like the women's title. The Divas title, it's like, I don't feel like seeing fucking one of the Bella sisters win it again, against whoever. It was like... Hey,
but you know what? Give them credit for in their later years, they developed into some, pretty, especially Nikki.
Yeah, they did
a lot better.
They did develop into being better. Maybe they were training with John Cena during that time,
perhaps,
when he was telling them about formal family dinners.
But the impact that people like Sasha and Bayley made some of those quote unquote diva wrestlers actually really step up. I mean, we never expected Alexa Bliss became a pretty good wrestler. Carmella became a pretty good wrestler. And I think a lot of that was...
Mandy Rose is actually pretty good too. She's good. Like, she's the beautiful woman gimmick, and I mean, a lot of people I think she's actually one of the better wrestlers who's just this beautiful woman gimmick, and she's NXT champion right now. So,
but I kind of feel like the way that they have it structured now is you got to be able to wrestle now to be on the women's roster.
You definitely...
It's more of a priority now.
Well, I don't know about now. As far as NXT 2.0, the women are some of the worst wrestlers on the show.
Keep in mind, it's kind of taken a step back and become a developmental thing again.
It has, and and I guess we'll get to that next. Any other matches that you really remember?
That's what I had written down. That was the list I had. I know there's probably more, but just off the top of my head, obviously any DIY match, there's just numerous ones we can go into with that, but any Gargano and the Gargano and Ciampa stuff was just, outstanding as well.
So I'm guessing that you, and this was like me, you weren't this guy who was freaking out over all these Adam Cole matches, right, in NXT, because, people were giving these 5 stars, 6 stars, and stuff like that, and I liked them. But by this time, when Adam Cole was wrestling on these main events, I felt like it was getting a little too much. There was this joke about they kick out of everything type of thing.
Right. I wouldn't really necessarily blame that on Adam Cole per se, but I do think NXT was already kind of starting. It already had reached its peak.
I think so.
By then too, and what really stopped it from tumbling down a little faster was people like Adam Cole and Undisputed Era that really stabilized it for a while. But let's be honest, it was at its peak with Gargano and Ciampa.
I agree, man. I totally agree. Yeah,
and Andrade and that era, and then
Drew McIntyre.
I also think that's when they started to kind of starve it a little bit and lead it to a slow death. They started to bleed it out a little bit.
It definitely changed to the point where during this Undisputed Era, like, I didn't really watch the weekly show anymore at that point, and I
really feel like they saw it becoming too big and they wanted to slowly bleed it out. It was getting to be more. I really honestly think it was getting to be a little too popular for their liking.
Well,
for the big company,
they definitely bled it out recently. A couple matches here that I have listed that you didn't mention. My favorite NXT match of all time is Neville versus Sami Zayn at our Evolution. Do you remember this match at all?
I don't know. I might have been something. What was it? Was it 2014?
It was, must have been 2014. It had, and honestly, this is kind of what very first got me into NXT, was that they're like, this new Japanese wrestler is coming into, and I was like, oh, cool, Japanese dude. I'm a big fan of Japanese stuff. And there's like Hideo Itami. I'm like, I never heard of him. Don't know who he is, but shit, I'm a fan of him. Immediately became a fan of him. Right. Being a Hideo Itami fan was very frustrating over the years. But
he got hurt almost right away.
Yeah, and then again, and was out for years, literally years. Yeah. But, he went against Finn Balor on this show. But this Sami Zayn Neville match was so awesome because Sami Zayn was on the build-up, on the rise. And Neville had turned heel and was this cocky asshole. And it was one of these, we've seen this story in wrestling a million times, where Sami Zayn gets the belt during the match, and he's looking at it and looking, the ref is down, right? And I remember Corey Graves, no, Sammy, don't do it. I'm in the library, dude. I'm homeless at the time. I'm watching at a library screaming, no, don't do it, Sammy, don't do it. And he finally wins it clean, you know what I mean? And after the match, his best friend came out to cheer him on. Who's his best? Kevin Owens. And turned on him and powerbombed him, and then the show ended. So, great story there. And Kevin Owens was busted in the nose by Juice Robinson earlier that night too. Gave him a broken nose. So, and
that's one of those, who's CJ Parker at the time, right?
Yeah, he had this gimmick of like he was like a Greenpeace hippie kind of character.
Right. Kind of fit him. The look did.
Oh, the look for sure with the dreads.
And there's all kinds of other guys that have kind of had their cups of coffee in NXT. We talked about Chris Hero, a.k.a. What was his name over there?
Cassius
Ohno. Sammy Callahan was Sullivan Crow.
Solomon Crow. Bobby Roode was champion for a little bit, and he was good in NXT.
Yes, he had one of the best entrance songs.
Oh, glorious! And I will go. Oh, dude, and we can't mention NXT actually without talking about CFOs. CFOs made like all these great NXT themes. They don't work with WWE anymore, but you look at the list of CFOs themes, and these guys were like They made the Seth Rollins theme. They made Finn Balor. They made the what's her name? Alexa Bliss, Sasha Banks. Yeah. So like, dude, these guys, they made that one, the Bobby Roode. They made like, these guys were the god of theme songs. They were like next Jim Johnston. WWE fucked up by not hiring them back. But
so why did they cut them in the first place?
They didn't get cut. They quit. Like they left WWE.
They quit.
Yeah.
I think they got frustrated with something. Are they using Jim Johnson again at all?
No.
Well, I heard that they
not that I know
for
of
something. But
well, they would be smart too, considering he's like. Although he doesn't make like modern style music very well, but his rock shit is awesome. He did make Jinder Mahal's theme, so.
So I think that's fairly recent then.
Yeah, but he might have made it. Yeah, I mean, I think he was fired in like 2014, 2015, 2015.
They got rid of him in 2015.
Okay, yeah.
I think he worked a little bit. No, I'm asking you because I think he might have been like him and CFOs were both on the payroll for a little while.
Yeah, but Johnston was doing obviously main roster, and the CFOs was doing the other ones. So let me see here when he was released.
I mean, obviously Jim Johnson like did Stone Cold's theme.
Oh, Jim Johnston's a legend. He worked until 2017.
So not that long ago.
He's a weird guy too. Like you hear interviews of him and stuff. Like he's a weird dude. He's like never even learned to read music and stuff on the guitar, which is pretty incredible.
I believe they have some kind of little network documentary on him that's worth checking out. I think I've seen it.
Well, check that out. Everyone, you should go watch that. I've heard interviews with him. Seems like a real interesting dude. Like, but definitely the best, theme writer of all time. I mean, I think without a doubt.
Well, it's either him or Jimmy Hart, maybe.
What did Jimmy Hart write?
Jimmy Hart did a lot of the WC. Well, actually, just look it up. I mean, Jimmy Hart was, he's done a lot. I'll just put it that way.
Okay.
His voice isn't even on some of them, I think. But Jimmy Hart used to do a lot of the WWE themes in the 80s, 90s, and early 90s, and probably a lot of WCW stuff.
Okay. By the way, I have this CFO's info here, and they did make Nakamura's song too, just as an example of it. In February 2020, it was publicly reported that CFOs had been in a dispute with their publisher over the previous several months. Due to money CFOs states was owed to them per their publishing deal, they attempted to have WWE buy them out of their publishing deal and have them work in-house. But the publisher rejected the proposal, and as a result, WWE stopped using them. And then they were released. That's a shitty situation, huh?
So, you think WWE's like, you gotta buy, like, CFOs is like, you gotta buy us out, and they're
Sounds
like, okay,
like,
but if this doesn't work, you're gone. Because we don't want to.
It says that the publisher. It said that the publisher rejected the deal. So the people that they owed money to, or that owed them money, wouldn't take the money from. That's confusing.
So to me, that seems like WWE doesn't like being saying no to. So the fact that that company said no, they felt embarrassed and they cut CFOs. Is that what the impression I'm getting? Because I've also heard maybe CFOs didn't appreciate the respect they were getting from them or something. I don't know, but I know that the relationship with CFOs is probably what Jim Johnson was feeling. Because it seemed like
they also don't like old people unless you're like a producer. I mean, so as far as Jim Johnston goes, but that's a weird situation. I'd love to read more on that on exactly what happened, because I feel like those guys were worth it. I mean, shit. They were making great music, and they definitely defined that early NXT with their music. So shout outs to CFOs, and shout outs to NXT 2.0. So as we know, time went by and we had the Wednesday Night Wars. Anything to say about the Wednesday Night Wars? I mean, there's not a whole lot to say because it was so one-sided.
I mean, but you're talking about TNT versus USA. I mean, they're both pretty prevalent cable networks, although probably TNT has a little more eyes on it because of its affiliation with like the NBA and that kind of things, and and playing off of that.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about it. NXT was kind of on its decline to begin with at that point, and AEW was the shiny new toy.
They were the shiny new toy, and that, but
they still are.
They still are. I kind of question that. That's what Vince's excuse. So why is AEW beating it? Oh, well, they're new, and it's like, well, NXT.
Well, just look at ticket sales. Look at all that stuff. I mean, I think also the appeal of AEW at an arena is more attractive than watching NXT in a studio. They weren't a touring brand either. So
that's very true.
An NXT show looks the same every week, but AEW's live in Chicago. AEW's live in somewhere in Texas. AEW's live in Florida. They were all over the place, and I think that was attracting people to view as well.
I think AEW is generally a better show. We talked about NXT kind of starting to go downhill, and that was definitely, they were on their slide at this point when they went on TV. So, I mean, yes, it was the new thing, but, NXT, it feels like they could have done something. They could have. I think they could have. And, it wasn't meant to be, man. They moved into that Wednesday night time slot. They moved on to USA because they were at Wednesday night before.
Yeah.
But
I just honestly think if they would have, it wasn't the way it was set up, how great it was, like all these matches we talked about, it wasn't a sustainable model. If it wasn't the main, company shows, this was not a sustainable model.
Yeah, man. Do you know how many times NXT won in the key demo over all their nights?
A few times, I think.
It was once.
Really?
Once in 2000 on December 18th of 2019. So,
but honestly, it wasn't SmackDown, it wasn't Raw. It was basically their third show going against AEW's first show. It's not a fair match.
And it seems like there's different people watching these shows, too, from the demos. I mean, NXT is an old person's... What were they saying? Like, the median viewer for one of these NXT shows was, 50, dude. That means,
I don't know any 50-year-olds that watch NXT. I don't know where they get these from.
Well, it's Nielsen ratings.
I don't know any 50-year-olds that are watching wrestling. It's just so weird. I don't know.
I do. There's quite a bit, actually, man. And the thing is they've watched WWE since the 70s. Or 80s, excuse me. And so, I mean, it's literally habit. That's the idea, and I agree with this, where AEW fans will watch AEW if there's big stuff on. We don't really watch, every single week, where the NXT and WWE fans just watch every week. No matter what's on.
Out of habit. There's more habit there.
Yeah, exactly. And that takes time to build for AEW.
Well, that's, like you said, though, it has to be somebody that that has just been a viewer for years, because people don't. Obviously, if you're an AEW fan, you haven't been an AEW fan since the 90s. So this is a time where people consume things differently. I
was a fan of Tony Khan when he was born, dog.
There you go.
So it is different. But I mean, they got their ass kicked. They switched nights, and they've changed to NXT 2.0. I asked you what you think about them earlier, and I know one thing that you said was that a lot of these people are new, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but also every wrestler you see for the first time is new. Or, I mean,
sure.
I guess it is a little weird though, because they're new to the fans inside there as well, right? When we saw Nakamura for the first time, the fans knew who he was, and they were cheering for him, and he looked like a huge star. Now we're seeing people like Grayson Waller, and even the fans are like, "Who the fuck is this guy?"
Yeah, and the more that we've talked about this, I was I don't know if I was upset at myself or whatever for not knowing who any of these people are when I was watching that show. But, as we're talking this out, I feel like it was something they kind of had to do. I think they really had to hit the reset button, because, like I said, having all these great matches on what many people consider a secondary product, that's not...
It was kind of seen that way too, secondary. It was seen as the less than in a way by the end, in my opinion.
Unless they were going to just totally intermingle the three brands.
Yeah. Which they tried.
Solution.
They tried. They had some Survivor Series. Remember that? Keith Lee was like the coolest dude there.
Yeah, but like if you're just a casual viewer of WWE, and then all of a sudden this brand you never heard of, is coming up and destroying everyone, doesn't that make you think lesser of the two shows that are on? And I think there was a lot of pressure from USA. Well, we want this NXT thing. Look at all this stuff going on. And WWE, I guarantee you they were not reluctant to put this show on USA. And
I mean, I wonder.
USA, look, it's not going to work. AEW is going to outperform us. No, we just want more content. I don't know. I mean, I think that at some point they purposely euthanized it.
Well, you got a contract where you have to make TV, right? I mean, and secondly, you got beat in this war. And I guess, you had to it was time to do something different. The same old formula wasn't working.
Live every week during this?
Most weeks, but of course COVID and all that stuff, right?
Same with
AEW.
AEW had canned a few. Yeah. But I just kind of think that the thing with USA Network is I think they might actually, I don't know if they do any sports. But WWE
I do the Olympics.
Pro wrestling are the only consistent live program they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're going to try and milk it as much as they can. They want live programming because that's your best chance at getting ratings is having live programming because people don't want to be spoiled and they don't want to miss something, so they want to watch it live. That's the only chance you have not to be DVR'd or next day Hulu'd or whatever, is if you can provide live programming that people do not want to be spoiled or miss.
No, you're right. And I mean, we know as wrestling fans and you as a sports fan, like you want to watch that live, you don't want to hear about it afterwards. So,
and advertisers probably pay more money to be on live television.
For sure.
If you're the USA Network, how can we get more live TV? Well, why is WWE putting this on their network when they can be giving it to us? That kind of thing.
Well, and so you're right. And also you have to think that USA also runs Raw, right? And so, I mean, maybe the idea to change this new NXT into a truly developmental brand like FCW was, maybe USA's on board like, okay, well, we make Raw, so, we want better people for Raw, so... let's go with that. You mentioned Triple H and stuff earlier, and we haven't said his name enough on this show, but, thank you to Triple H, and Triple H is generally considered to be the mastermind, Triple H of that era of NXT, what I guess is now referred as to the black and gold. Do you remember after all the debuts or after all the big matches, you'd see pictures on Twitter of Triple H with his arm around the guy?
Right, become a meme almost.
It's become a meme. His nickname was Papa H, I think he was called.
And of course, there's a lot of other, people behind the scenes.
Shawn Michaels.
Like Shawn Michaels in recent, who's probably one of the main guys there now.
I believe so, yeah. Dusty Rhodes was the big guy, promo class. Steve Corino. Yeah.
I think Norman Smiley is still there doing stuff as well.
You have... Actually, now you have Hideki Suzuki working as a coach. He's on TV too, but he's kind of in the background, although that's more like the 2.0 era.
And I think up until recently, Scotty 2
Hotty, yeah, he was there too. So, we don't see a ton of backstage stuff for NXT. I feel like they keep that a little more under wraps in a way, but we've seen some stuff. And but definitely we know that Triple H is generally considered the mastermind, the booker for a while there. And so all these matches and stuff and all this booking, which was so good at a time, this is Triple H, man. This is Triple H's brand. And I just, it's like he couldn't have done any better with what he was given, I think, to be honest.
Let's think of this as a restart, and maybe in 3 or 4 years we'll be talking about how great these cards are. Maybe it was just they want to build it back up again,
Yeah. It's possible, man, but you definitely can see that it's this Vince McMahon thing. We want big dudes. We want, sexy women. And,
but, and I guess you can say in recent years it was going away from being young wrestlers. I mean, like,
for sure. Bobby Roode, Nakamura.
2016. 2012 to 2016, it was all young guys, right?
I don't know. No, it wasn't because you had freaking Samoa Joe in there, and you had,
yeah, but the foundation,
the very earliest, 2014, I would say was younger. But you go, let's at 2016, okay.
That's what I'm saying, but 2014 and 2016,
yes,
and then they started adding the veterans spots, adding them to spots,
Yeah, Ty Dillinger, holy shit, man, I give that guy a 10. Austin Aries too was in NXT, and I think he talked his way right out of the fucking company, as he's talked his way out of a lot of different companies. So. I'll tell you this, man. I watched that War Games on NXT 2.0, and I do see a good future, at least for the men.
Braun Breaker. I mean, I don't know why they just don't call him Braun Steiner, and
who knows?
Let that lineage just glow with the name, not just the appearance. But he seems like he's going to be a big star.
I mean, we've heard rumors that he's being groomed to be the next top guy, and you know what? I heard that about Roman Reigns. I feel like I heard that about him before he was the next top guy. People were saying he's going to be the next top guy. So, I mean, it very well could happen. And if that's the case, I think that'll be a good thing. He is the most talented out of the crew. But one final question is they have this new program, their new hiring or recruitment program. Do you know about this, where instead of looking at indie wrestlers, they're going to start signing college wrestlers while they're still in college? Did you hear about that?
Well, I did see that they signed a women's basketball player.
Yeah, yep. And they signed Gable Steveson, who is still in college, because college has made it legal. NCAA has made it legal to get paid while you're in college now.
Right, which is great and should have been done years ago. So, yeah, they're taking a different approach to this because they do not want to be signing guys that have had experience in other places just because people can say, well, they got them from Ring of Honor. They got them from, they signed this guy off the indies. They want to create 100% factory molded talent. They want that. They can completely take credit for.
And they want that loyalty, man. They want that loyalty, we brought you up, we made you, You're never going to see Charlotte jump ship, you know what I mean, man?
They want people that are going to be there until they tell them they can't be there anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Because all these guys that we're switching over now were people that have had the taste of having a little more freedom in other places, right?
Yeah. That were huge in some other places and stuff.
They're trying to become, and you know what, from a business standpoint, I get it. I understand what they're doing. They're trying to become a different product than AEW.
It is a very different product. But
they're trying to, they're just trying to start from scratch with their approach. So
I think it's smart. I think that for them right now, the main goal is the main roster. And for a lot of NXT guys, that was a nightmare for them, right? There's NXT guys that would never go to the main roster now. So, they want
No Way Jose and all that stuff. But I think that there were some guys...
DIY, right? Those guys will never go to the main roster.
Well, they did.
They did for a minute.
Somebody got hurt, right?
Yeah, but I mean, what happened after that? They went straight back to NXT and then went on a run and became champion multiple times, both of them. So
yeah,
I mean,
there are some that they just brought up just to say, okay, well, we're about to release them. Let's see if they can luckily catch, No Way Jose.
Oh God,
there was a few others that they just brought up for no reason.
Yeah, I'm it's so many forgettable people. Adam Rose and No Way Jose are two of those. It's oh yeah, they did exist and they went to the main roster. But I don't know, man. I definitely see some stuff. I kind of like Gigi Dolan from Toxic Attraction is kind of over. She's goofy and shit, but And Braun Breaker is good, and the other guys do some cool stuff too. Now, there are some wrestlers that are completely inexperienced, and they don't even get moves. You know, like, they won't even give them spots. You know what I mean?
I think they should treat them like young lions and just say, here's
I wish.
Purely, like, rookie guy. I've come up with some term to call them. Or some type of, like, presentation for these just flat-out young lions.
Do you think they should live in the main wrestler's house and cook their chonko for them and do their laundry? Yes. I think so,
They're
too.
They're not doing that now?
They aren't, no. I think they just live in Orlando and make like $100,000 a year.
Right.
So,
which ain't bad for these kids right out of college, right?
Fuck no, dude, especially if you work once a week. Or what if you work once a month, bro, and you just have to... Well, they do have to train probably every day, though, huh?
No, they train. It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're there 5-6 days a week training and learning. So.
Yeah, no, they're in class and all. So, yeah, you're totally right on that. So... NXT, man, wow, it's been a while now. We're looking at coming up on 10 years, and where we are, it's 10 years. We're past 10 years, 2011.
I think this conversation we've had has inspired me to maybe take a look at 2.0, and I've developed, like, talking with you, I've developed a new lens to look at it with, and
awesome.
I don't agree with a lot of the stuff WWE does these days.
Yeah.
But I felt like them resetting with NXT was probably something they had to do.
You know, and I watched that show, and I actually... You know what's fun, man, is when you see these new wrestlers, you're like, who the fuck are they? And then you see them a couple more times, and you're like, okay, I kind of like this guy, you know? And I actually started feeling that way during the show. Like, these people that I thought were idiots at first, which, dude... Any new wrestler I see looks like a moron to me, unless they're like in Noah or I mean, except Master Wato. But most wrestlers, like when I first see him, I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? What?
Mr. Wato's come around recently.
He's better. You know, he's definitely better.
He's got this.
Did you call him Mr. Wato? Master Wato. He should be called Mr. Wato. He's definitely not a master, but yes, he's had a better tournament.
Soccer mom haircut now.
his match with Hiromu was actually really great, but he's coming around. But no, man, like, but seeing these guys and then getting to know them and then seeing like, okay, you know what, like, and then the way they booked them, like you know, to have some of these new guys win and turn, and you're like, okay, let's see. I could see. Look, they're going to learn, man, and it's up to them to put those skills to the best use, to have good matches, and do the best they can in the system. I mean, you know, The Undertaker was given the worst gimmick in the world and turned it into gold, man. So it's a tough job, but they got to do it. So,
yeah, I mean, they need a place to have a kind of virtual, like, you know, drawing pad, like where they could try different things, because obviously, you know, what they're having up top now isn't satisfying all the fans. I mean, I know they're still making their entirely profitable, but
yeah,
this is probably the way for them to go if they want to, you know, not have to worry about losing talent to other places. You get them early and make them loyal to you.
I agree, Justin. And on that, is there anything else you want to tell the fans? Man,
I think that's it.
I do too, and I'm actually getting tired. Now I'm the one getting tired. Shit. So, thanks you all for listening to Wrestling and. This is Wrestling and NXT, and next week we are going to talk about Wrestling and Enzo Amore. Oh, actually, we already did that episode. So
we did Enzo Amore.
Yeah, we did that. We did that. So, thanks everyone for listening. Y'all have a good one. Bye.